This is the Thriving Dentist Show with Gary Takis, where we help you develop your ideal dental practice, one that provides personal, professional, and financial satisfaction.
Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Dentist Show. I'm Gary Takis, your podcast co-host. We have a very useful topic for you today. This episode is titled Proven Tips to Keep Your Hygiene Schedule Filled. That should be a goal of all of yours, and I think you're going to appreciate these proven tips. Hey, before I get into the content in this podcast episode, I have two announcements to make. The first announcement is coming up shortly after the publication of this episode, within a couple of weeks. We have a masterclass coming that I think you'll appreciate. It's titled 24 Systems of a Thriving Practice. That's on June 15th, 7 to 10 p.m. This is done in a masterclass format. Masterclass is a 3-hour course that allows me to go into a lot of detail about a particular topic. And the topic that I'm going to be sharing in that masterclass is the 24 Systems of a Thriving Practice. I'm a huge believer in having a systems-driven practice. And we've created, in our coaching work and in my own practice, we've created 24 systems that will help your practice thrive and help you create incredible results in your practice. If you'd like to learn what those are, join us for the masterclass. The masterclass is a cool format. It's done live stream, so you can attend from the comfort and convenience of your home or office without the cost and inconvenience of travel. But it's done live, so you can ask me questions. And we'll cover this in detail, and you'll have information that you can apply the next day in your practice. If you'd like to register for that masterclass, go to thrivingdentist.com/masterclass. Very inexpensive. It is less than $100 tuition. You get 3 hours of CE credits. Come join us for those systems, 24 systems of a thriving practice. The next announcement I have is we have a new guest contributor today in the form of Dr. Jared Williams. And Jared is going to share with you a very cool technique on how to perform sutureless horizontal impaction for third molars. Now, Jared did something very cool. In addition to providing the audio for this tip, he also has video recorded. So the audio is about 7 minutes long. And if you're interested at all in third molar removal, you'll love Jared's tips. But I also encourage you to listen to it in audio format, but to get the full value of it, you're going to want to watch this in video. So Jared was kind enough to share the video with us, and we have embedded that on the Thriving Dentist podcast website. So if you'd want to watch it in video format, just go to thrivingdentist.com, click podcast, scroll down to this episode, and you'll see it, the video in the show notes. And I'd encourage you to watch it there because the video is very well done. And I want to thank Dr. Williams for putting the effort to do a really high quality video. And again, how to perform sutureless horizontal impaction for third molars. I think you'll appreciate that. Well, thank you again for joining us. Can't wait to dive into the topic, proven tips to keep your hygiene schedule filled.
Hey, Thriving Docs. I want to share with you how you can do a sutureless horizontal impaction surgery. Let's jump into it. All right, so we have this young lady here. She's 21 years old. She has a horizontal mesial angle impaction, as you can see on the screen. And I'm going to share with you some techniques that you can apply to your practice today in order to get results. Now, here's a disclaimer. If you haven't had formal training within third molar surgery, social media is not going to do it for you. Make sure you do a tremendous amount of studying because remember, your patients are the lifeblood of your practice. And if your patients are gone, your practice won't thrive. All right, let's jump into it. So as you can see right here, I have my Minnesota present and I've already anesthetized the patient and we're ready to rock and roll. You could already see that this cusp is already sticking out from the alveolar housing and also being soft tissue impacted. As I press play, you're going to see how I go ahead and lay my flap. I like this flap because what it does is it allows me to have adequate access into the area that I'm going to be working in. So what I like to do when I'm doing these types of flaps is I like to go over my cut several times so that the gingiva does not tear. And the reason why we want to make sure that the gingiva doesn't tear is this. It's going to prevent your site to heal quickly. So when there's very little tears, you're going to have quicker healing, less pain medication, and less phone calls for you to deal with. All right, so as I'm reflecting this flap, I'm making sure that I'm seated underneath the periosteum, because if I'm seated underneath the periosteum, no bone spicules or bone dust will get in between the areas that I want to operate in. So as you can see now, as I'm getting situated, I want to ensure that my flap is nicely reflected, and we could go ahead and proceed with sectioning this tooth. Then I'll proceed to getting my surgical handpiece and removing bone, as you can see here. Now, it's super important to make your cuts very small so that your flap, once you're finished, will just lay back over the extracted tooth area. And so when you are doing this cut here, you want to just treat it as if you're doing a crown-like prep cut or feather edge. And so all I'm doing is just removing the bony undercuts and the tooth undercuts so that I could have a nice path of draw. Then I'm proceeding to go ahead and do a furcation cut. That's when I go 1 millimeter past the furcation, so that when I go to separate the crown from the tooth and have the molar turn into 2 premolars, we have that situated. I want to address the fact that I'm putting this gauze in the back of the patient's mouth so that when this tooth pops, we'll be able to make sure that nothing goes into the patient's throat. And by protecting the patient, we're going to be able to smile after surgery when we're completed. So now we're going ahead and removing the distal aspect of that 3rd molar so I could gain access to the furcation and the roots that are present. And simply what we want to do is make sure that we don't disturb the IN, so we're not going to be doing anything brute force. We simply want to be able to get in and remove the roots without disturbing the nerve. In this scenario right here, what I'm doing is I'm just making the tooth a little bit smaller so that when we go ahead to take the tooth out, we have a nice path of draw. Everything within this technique is technique sensitive. So learning how to remove 3rd molars, you can do it very quickly and atraumatically, but you have to know the right technique. And hopefully this video will give you some insight on how delicate this procedure can be, but then how quickly the procedure could take as well when getting this tooth out. So as you can see, I'm just removing the crown from the actual tooth so that I could literally get in there and just wiggle those roots on it out of there. What I'm going to do here is this. I just want to pause and just show you the furcation cut that I have here. Right here. So you see this right here? As you can see, my elevator is closing this space, but this is that furcation cut. And so I'm on the mesial root. Here's the distal root right here. And so essentially what I want to do is just tease those roots out so that I don't disturb the IN. And so there's very little force that's being placed upon this tooth. And so essentially what I want to do is just see what root's going to come out first. Will it be the mesial or the distal? All right, so we see that the distal is coming out first, and all we want to do is just tease it out. And if you do it correctly, you can see that the roots just simply come on out as if they were wanting to come out to begin with. Now, as you can see here, I get my cotton pliers. Now, I'm a GP, so I don't like to use certain instruments, but certain things I do like to use as a GP. You can see my roots came out nicely, and I'm using my cotton pliers because I want to make sure that I could feel that tactile force that could potentially be holding that tooth in. That's a huge key right there. And so you can see that these roots weren't all the way fully formed, and I could actually see right into the socket. And I want to go in there and just clean everything up. And so these are certain things that you want to be aware of when you're treating your patients. because when you take care of your patient and you do things atraumatically, the patient responds well, the site responds well, and then you get paid handsomely. All right. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and close everything up. And you can see how, because the flap was small, the tissues just fall in themselves. And that would be about the area in where you would suture anyway, and the tissues would just collapse. All right, guys. So that's how you go ahead and manage a horizontal mesial-impacted third molar so that you don't have to place sutures. It may sound funny now, but after doing 12,000 of these cases, you understand that what looks hard is often easy. All right, thriving docs, make it a great one.
Welcome back to the Thriving Dentist Coaching in Action segment. This is Naren, your co-host. I really enjoyed that video from Dr. Williams, Jared Williams. Jared, thank you. You are a master, and it's obvious. So like Gary said, listen to it, but definitely if you can, go back and watch the video, because you will get 3 times the impact when you watch it. So we're going to make it easy. You can just go to the show notes and find it. Now, I'm really excited about today's topic, Gary, proven tips to keep your hygiene schedule filled. I think anyone who's a fan of the Thriving Dentist Show and who has been following you for the last several years knows you are a big advocate of a hygiene-driven practice. And you have been practicing this not just the last 2 years or 3 years, but 40 years, right? You learned this early in your career, and you had some amazing mentors who taught you this. And then you have lived it ever since. And of course, you've fine-tuned it and fine-tuned it and fine-tuned it. So I think today's conversation about, what are those few big ideas that can make a big difference in your practice when it comes to hygiene. And also, I'm assuming you will also get into why is a hygiene-driven practice is a formula for success. So I'm looking forward to it. Let's jump right in.
Yeah, and Aaron, I'm excited about this topic. Guilty as charged. I am a big advocate of a hygiene-driven practice. Dr. Omer Reed, very early in my career, impressed that upon me. And I remember Omer telling me, Gary, always remember that the hygiene department is a very, very, very important part of a successful practice. And he said it with such conviction. I understood it intellectually, and it made an impact on me from the very beginning. But I understand it even more so now. Hygiene is critically important. I can talk about the numbers, why it can affect your practice positive from a numerical way, from financial way. But maybe the best way to talk about it is that having a strong hygiene department and training our patients to keep their hygiene appointments will help your patients be healthier, will help them. I like to say, Naren, if you were the patient, Naren, if we can get you committed to keeping a regular schedule of hygiene appointments, we're going to accomplish 2 things. We're going to keep you as healthy as possible, and we're going to reduce your future dental expenses because we could find things at the earliest stage and treat it as conservatively as possible before it becomes a bigger problem. That's why it's so important for you to be regular about keeping your hygiene appointments. Naren, does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think,
what's every patient going to say?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I live this, right? The beauty of the dental business model, especially a hygiene-driven practices, you have a relationship and a touch point that's lifelong, but it's happening every 6 months, every 3 months, depending on the condition of the patient.
You're hopefully every time you interact with the patient, the connection that you have deepens.
Exactly.
And it deepens to the point where they would never consider going anywhere else, because you have all the history and you have all the background and you care about them and they feel it. Yeah. The other point that I like to make about a hygiene-driven practice is that you also, Naren, that I'm a fan of having our listeners add high-value services to their menu of services that they provide.
100%.
Placing, restoring implants, adult orthodontics, cosmetic dentistry, complex restorative dentistry, treating obstructive sleep apnea with appliance therapy, for example. Any of those could be good examples of high-value dentistry. And there's other examples. But we often find that for those high-value services, some people are ready right now to have those done, and they're ready. Others, we can plant seeds with and cultivate those seeds, throughout their visits to our practice. And then we're ready when they're ready. A really good example of that, Naren, is cosmetic dentistry, say doing a smile design. And maybe in the very initial appointment, the patient says they are interested in improving their smile. And we treatment plan, a smile design, maybe a 10-unit upper anterior porcelain veneer case. But if the timing may not be just right for that patient right then, there's no urgency on their part. They'd like to have it done, but there's no urgency. But if we can see that patient, let's assume they have healthy gums every 6 months, then we can periodically revisit their thinking about that smile design. And then at some point, very often, the patient will say, hey, I'm ready to have that done, doctor. And oftentimes there's some external event in their life. Maybe they have a big anniversary coming up. Maybe a daughter's wedding is coming up and they want to look their best for the daughter's wedding. Or maybe they're changing careers or changing their jobs into something that is more customer facing. And now all of a sudden their appearance is more important. And so by keeping them in your practice and keeping them engaged and keeping the connection, you're going to do that dentistry. It's just a matter of timing. Another reason why hygiene-driven practice is so important. Well, I want to begin with the Stephen Covey concept of begin with the end in mind. And I want to set a benchmark for you. And the benchmark is a thriving practice will fill 92% or more of the available hygiene appointments in any given time period. 92% or more. Now, Nara, why do you think I didn't say 100%?
I mean, I think you have experience and that is not a goal that most people
can accomplish.
Yeah, it's not realistic. Yeah.
It's not realistic.
Yeah.
And 92% fill, that would mean, I'm just going to use a very a simple example. Let's say you had 100 available hygiene appointments for the month. At the end of the month, if we ended up with 92 of those appointments being filled with a butt in the seat, not filled and then they change, but filled with a butt in the seat, then that's an A on the report card.
Yes.
And I want to state that 92% is a very high standard, Aaron. Very difficult, not easy to do. Nothing easy about that at all. I'd almost call it like Olympic level performance, like the Olympics. However, it's entirely possible because I can point to our clients and I can show you where they're getting it month after month after month. That's why we call this proven tips. Keep your hygiene schedule filled, because this has been proven, not only in Life Smiles, but in our client offices as well. So let me walk through. I'm going to walk through 5 very specific tips. Let me rattle through those. I'm going to number them 1 through 5, but they're not numbered in importance. They're all equally important. Number 1, I would encourage you to have assigned a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator. That person is your dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator. Now, that individual may have many other duties that they do, but I want to have one person responsible for the hygiene schedule. If you have multiple people that work on your hygiene schedule, which is what I often see in client offices, what that means is we don't have any accountability. We don't have any ownership. And sometimes what can happen is when everybody does it, nobody does it. It doesn't happen. So having a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator, and let that hygiene scheduling coordinator know with clear communication from you that, we're going to do a review for you every year like we do for all of our team members. And the number one way we're going to evaluate your performance in the practice is your success at filling the hygiene department, your success at filling it to 92% or above. And if you do everything else well in the practice, but you fail at that number one priority, you're not going to get a good review. That's a degree of clarity that you have to have with that. Let them know that. Set them up for success. Number 2. Oh, and by the way, a subset of the first tip, have a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator. I would suggest having an individual bonus designed for that hygiene scheduling coordinator. And here's how that might work. That if your hygiene schedule coordinator reaches 92% or above, you provide X amount in a monthly bonus. And you can decide what that is, based on your budget and your practice. In my client offices, we'll recommend somewhere between, 200 could be a good number. It could be 250 a month. So if you're at 92% or above, let's say you're going to get a $250 bonus. Now, you can make it more interesting by having a second tier. And that is that if you reach 95% or above, we'll double that bonus amount. In the case of the 250, we'll double it to 500. By the way, it wouldn't take much math for you to figure out that if you could get to 92%, how much additional revenue your practice would have. This bonus pays for itself. And the difference between 92 and 95%, that bonus will flat out pay for itself. Now, Naren, I've got a team member that is as motivated about getting that goal done as we are as a practice, because that person's motivated for themselves. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Gary. Absolutely.
All right. Second tip, set positive patient expectations about the importance of keeping their appointments. And the way I like to do that is at the end, at some point during the first visit to the office, I would like one of your team members to sit down with the patient and say something like this: Naren, we sure appreciate you choosing our office for your dental care. And we're going to work really hard to provide you the highest quality dentistry and make every visit a positive experience like today. And I want to share with you before you leave today 4 things you can expect as an active patient in our practice. Would it be okay if I did that, Naren?
Yes.
I'm going to give you 4 things. So number 1, we're going to treat you like we would a family member or loved one. Now, because of that, number 2, we're going to use the highest quality materials, the best resources, the latest advances, because that's what we would expect if we're a patient. Number 3, we stand behind our work. If something isn't right, we redo it until it meets our standards. And number 4, we have a protocol for you to reach our doctors after hours if needed, and we hand them a card with that protocol. Now, if it's routine, just call the office and leave a message. But if after hours is any dental concern as an active patient in our practice, then you have the right to reach our doctors after hours. We would be concerned. Naren, now that I've shared with you the 4 things you can expect from us, can I take a minute and share what we expect from you?
Absolutely.
Just one thing. Naren, we ask that if you make an appointment, you show up. No. We are family people. We understand that life, gets
Stuff
hectic
happens.
sometimes. Stuff happens. We understand stuff happens. In fact, Naren, I saw a bumper sticker the other day that said stuff happens. Well, it didn't say stuff. It did start with an S, but it didn't say stuff. And we understand that. And if stuff does happen, Naren, all we ask is that you kindly give us 48 hours advance notice if you need to change an appointment. Naren, does that sound fair to you?
That sounds totally fair.
Now, I can't guarantee you that will work 100% of the time. However, it will radically reduce the cancellation of no-shows. All I really want to do, Naren, I obviously want the patient to show up, but at a minimal expectation, I want them to give us 48 hours notice. Because if they give us 48 hours notice, there's a high likelihood we could fill that appointment. And so could our listeners. And so how I know this works is when we're sending out our confirmations for our loyal patients, the sequence we use is a 7-day advance notice, then a 3-day, then a 2-day advance notice. When we send out that first notice 7 days in advance of their appointment, some patients will call and say, Carly, oh my gosh, I have a hygiene appointment next week. I got your reminder today, and I don't know what I was thinking. Next week, I'm going to be out on vacation. I wanted to call you and reschedule that appointment. And I know I had to give you 48 hours notice. And now she's calling a week in advance. Good training, wouldn't you say, Naren?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so number 2, set positive patient expectations. Number 3, whenever we talk to patients about their hygiene appointments, let's provide a benefit statement. And the benefit statement that I like is the one I used in my role play with you, Naren. Naren, if we see you on a regular basis, if we can get you committed to coming in on a regular basis, and in your case, because you have healthy gums, that means every 6 months, we're going to accomplish 2 things. We'll keep you as healthy as possible. We'll reduce your future dental expenses. So anytime you're trying to reactivate past due patients, or anytime we're talking about the patient about making their next hygiene appointment, remember to include a benefit statement. It's not just about I want to get you scheduled, but I want to schedule your next appointment because we know if we see you on a regular basis, we accomplish 2 things. Keep you as healthy as possible, reduce your future dental expenses. 2 things that patients dearly want. Number 4, I'm going to get into the mechanics of a dual confirmation system. If you have a single confirmation system, everyone gets the same approach, you are doing your practice a disservice because not everyone should be treated the same. I recommend a dual confirmation system. One is a default system. The default system that we use, and I recommend to our clients, is a confirmation sent at 7 days, 3 days, 2 days. And the majority of those confirmations can be sent using technology in the form of text messages. If you're still calling to confirm, you are wasting a massive amount of time. Your team member, your hygiene standpoint is calling people, it is a waste of time. Those could be sent out by email message, or excuse me, text message direct to their phone. And the message would, just remind them of the appointment. They can confirm back. If they confirm back, they can opt out of get a future message. If they don't need any more messages, they can opt out. And if they opt out, then your system can be set up to automatically send a reminder the day before. So 7 days, 3 days, 2 days. That's for the loyal people, the reliable ones. The dual part of the confirmation is a second system for our at-risk patients. And when I say at risk, I don't mean medically, but I mean at risk of not showing up. And your team members already know who those people are. And they should go in a different sequence.
Yeah, when it comes to the second group, right? There are some people like you and me, we can put something in our calendar weeks in advance and we will show up, right? Because that's because we are business people, whatever you want to call it, we are used to that structure.
Right.
There are a lot of others, let's say a housewife, who's doing all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of hard for that person to like plan what's going to happen, 3 weeks from now, Tuesday at 2 p.m. So like putting the wrong person in the wrong box doesn't work.
And ultimately, it's history that puts the patients in the different categories.
Right.
Because data never lies.
Exactly. What happened in the past?
Shows up, if Naren routinely shows up for his appointment or calls and reschedules, but with 48 hours notice, then he's in the default, 732.
Right.
But if Naren shows a pattern of broken appointments, he goes in the at-risk group. And that at-risk notice goes like this. They get the first reminder 14 days in advance, the second one 7 days, then 6 days, then 5 days, then 4 days, then 3 days, then 2 days. By the way, each one of those messages is different. It's not the same message. It's all programmed. It's all done automated. Now, the patient can respond back and confirm, and they can opt out of future messages. If they do, they'll get a reminder the day before. Now, very few of that at-risk people respond. Most of them just ignore it. And so now when you get to 2 days ahead, you've sent all these messages. At this point, I'm officially stalking them, Naren. 14 days, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. No response. So now we give them one more flurry of communication 2 days before. And we do that by all three methods: text message, email, and a voice message. And it says, Naren, this is Linda from Family Dental. And we have you scheduled, let's say on Thursday with Kelly, our hygienist, but we haven't heard back from you. I've been sending messages. I haven't heard back from you. I need to hear back from you by 2 o'clock today if you would still like that appointment. If I don't hear back from you by 2 o'clock today, you will no longer have that appointment. I'll be scheduling another patient in that spot. Now it's yours if you want it. You just have to let me know by 2
Let
o'clock.
me ask you this. So this second group of people who you're calling at-risk patients, do you treat them differently? In other words, they're not in the same pile. Like they don't get the
no, they don't get the first message. No,
they don't get the first message. Okay.
No, they go this other sequence.
Got it.
And now, if they don't respond, we take it away. Now we have 2 days to fill it. Now we can fill it. And that will radically change your cancellation no-shows. And your team members can tell you who's coming and who isn't coming. And they go into that at-risk group, and we now deal with what they're, we proactively deal with it instead of, deal with it as it's happening. We now have 2 days to fill it. And it works incredibly well. Now, the last tip, the fifth tip I want to have is make sure that your hygiene scheduling coordinator always has a current ASAP list. In other words, someone that would like to be seen sooner. And there's two groups of people you can put in the ASAP list. Sometimes when we make hygiene appointments, we're booked out a little ways and the patient will say, oh, I can't get in before the end of June. And you can say, let's grab an appointment so we have it for you. But if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on my ASAP list. If I can open something up sooner, would you like me to contact you? And the patient might say, no, if we're going to have an appointment in the end of June, that'll be fine. Then they don't go on the list. But if they say, yes, please do, then I'm going to get some information. Naren, I'm going to put you on the ASAP list. Help me understand. Are there better times of the day, better days that are better for you? Give me some help. And you might say, well, hey, I work from home on Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday and Thursdays are great. Or maybe you say mornings are always good for me. And then we put a little note on the ASAP list and we know, mornings, then if I have a morning opening, I'm going to contact Naren. The other people we put on the ASAP list, Naren, this will sound a little bit contrarian, but it works, is patients that have routinely canceled the no-show for hygiene. We're not making appointments for them anymore. because you're just setting yourself up. And we just use blunt language with them. Naren, I can't make appointments for you anymore because I make appointments and you don't show up. And the patient, every time they're going to say, I know, I'm such a knucklehead on this. But Naren, we care about you. We don't want you to slip through the cracks. So I'm going to put you on my VIP list. Now, it's not actually VIP. It's a different list, but we're going to call them VIP. Here's what that means. I'm not going to make an appointment for it, but I'm going to put you on this VIP list. It'll be the same day, and I'm going to reach out to you. Let me make sure I have your cell phone. I'm going to reach out to you by text message. It will be the same day. It might be an hour from now. It might be 3 or 4 hours from now, but it'll be the same day. And if you want it, text me back quickly. Be quick with your thumbs, because believe it or not, Naren, we've got a couple of other VIPs in addition to you. And first come, first serve. So if you want it, let me know. Text me back and it's yours. And if not, that's fine. And that's how we're going to schedule you in the future. By the way, that group, that VIP list can work really well because these people are good people. They just can't keep to a schedule. And here they are sitting over at Starbucks. They got your message. Yes. Today works great. I'll be there. And historically, if it's made a couple hours later, they will show up. But 2 weeks later or 6 months later, no chance.
They won't show up.
No chance. So those are the 5 tips. Let me recap those. And these are proven tips to keep your hygiene schedule filled. Remember, the goal is 92% or above. Assign a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator and consider bonusing that person in the way that I described the bonus. Number 2, set positive patient expectations. Give them 4 benefits they get as an active patient and ask for 1 in return. That's that they keep their appointments or give you 48 hours notice. Number 3, always provide benefit statement when we talk to our patients. If we see you on a regular basis, we accomplish 2 things: reduce your future dental expenses and keep you as healthy as possible. Number 4, use a dual confirmation system. Some people need more babysitting than others, and it can all be done automated, so it doesn't take a lot of extra work. And number 5, keep a current ASAP list. And one of the ways you can check that, go to your hygiene scheduling coordinator and say, Linda, can you show me your ASAP list? And Naren, if she can show you that list, she's got one. If she says it's in my head, guess what? She doesn't have one.
Right.
Now, I'm not being critical. Just want to have a little check and balance on that last point. All right, Naren, I looked ahead. We've got some great questions from our listeners. Let's dive into the Q&A segment.
Welcome back to the Thriving Dentist Q&A segment. Gary, I really enjoyed the topic today, proven tips to keep your hygiene schedule filled. You had 5 wonderful tips, and I believe the team is going to also add an ebook, some kind of a summary of everything that you just shared with us today. So if anybody who goes to the website and finds the podcast, you could even download this and keep it as a resource.
Well, we've got 2 good reasons for our listeners to visit the show notes. One is to watch the video by Jared Williams, and 2, to get that little ebook for sure. Exactly.
And also, I have 4 questions for you from across the country, across the U.S. and one from abroad. The first question is this: I discovered that it has been a while since we have done any reactivation of patients who are past due for hygiene appointments. How is the best way to proceed?
By the way, Doctor, you have a lot of company in that. If we think about, as we're recording this, we're in the month of May of 2023. Let's think about what we all been through over the last 3 years with the pandemic. And initially back in March of 2020, everything went upside down. Offices were closed anywhere from 6 to 16 weeks. And many people got off their hygiene schedule. They couldn't go to the hygiene. They couldn't keep an appointment. They weren't allowed. And then, as there was still a lot of uncertainty around the pandemic, a lot of people were putting off visits to the dental office to let this thing kind of work its way through. So people got off schedule. And I'll guarantee every single practice, every listener to this podcast has patients that we haven't seen since maybe early 2020 or late 2019. They haven't gone anywhere else. They haven't gone to another dental office. They just haven't gone anywhere. And it's really important to reactivate those people. So here's what I would do specifically. And again, it's really important to use technology on this one. This is not someone making phone calls, leaving messages. That is not going to be effective in 2023. This is sending text messages. You can send them out in batches. And I would start with the most current group that are past due and work my way back. And you might deal with that in 6-month increments, just to keep it from being overwhelming. So maybe people that are, as you're listening to this, that are past due, they were due sometime in the first 6 months of 2023 and you haven't seen them, send them a text message. And that text message should say, hey, this is Linda from Family Dental. We've missed you. I'm reaching out to you to schedule your hygiene appointment. So kind of playful. We've missed you. I'm reaching, now I don't want to rub their nose in it, but I'm reaching out to you to schedule your next hygiene appointment. And what I'm going to do right now is use that benefit statement. We know if we see you on a regular basis, we accomplish two things: keep you as healthy as possible, or reduce your future dental expenses. You can call me like you always have, and I'll find a convenient time for your hygiene appointment. Or you could click this link. And the link, by the way, would be a link to a real-time online scheduling function, scheduling app. I like Local Med. There are others that do that. Or you could click this link and just make your hygiene appointment yourself. Now, I love the idea of including that link, Naren, because many people will do that and it doesn't create any administrative burden on the part of your team. They just make their next hygiene appointment. Does that make sense?
Yes, Gary.
Yeah. So start with the most recent group and then work your way back in 6-month increments. And we start with the first 6 months of 2023, the next batch, last 6 months of 2022, next batch, first 6 months of 2022, next batch, last 6 months of 2021, and so on. And how far back would you go? Because you're doing this with technology, and it doesn't cost us anything to do this, I might go back as far as 5 years. Go back to 2019, go back to 2018. There are patients that still think of you as their dentist that you haven't seen since 2018. Beyond that, you'll have to decide, but I'd go at least back 5 years and you can bring them back into your practice. A great way to do that. Well, Doctor, thank you for that question. I think that's something that's going to be useful for any of our listeners, because so many offices, even my client base, when did you do a formal reactivation? Oh my gosh, I can't remember the last time we did that. And now we're doing that. And now that's a great way to create added demand in our hygiene schedule, for sure.
Thank you, Gary. That's a wonderful, wonderful response. And I appreciate the details you went into. Understand the importance of a hygiene-driven practice. However, I'm a little torn here because I find it challenging to do any more than 2 hygiene exams per hour. Any suggestions?
Oh man, what a great question. And doctor, I can empathize with you. So what I'm hearing you say is I want to grow my hygiene department, but I don't want to have to do too many exams that make everything dysfunctional. Okay, right. I get it. I get it. Hey, 2 exams an hour is hard. I'm gonna come to your side and jump right in and say, I get it. It can be done. It can be managed, but it's hard. So some tips on that. So one of the things you could do is if you happen to have 3 exams required that hour, you could take a look and see if any of those 3 you could get by without an exam. Most states require an exam done once a year. And so you could find a patient that doesn't need an exam. That would preferably be a perio maintenance patient, a 4910 patient, ideally. Or a healthy adult that doesn't have any unscheduled treatment in their treatment plan. If they're healthy, but they have unscheduled treatment, we want to make sure we see them because we want to move the treatment along. We want to check in on them and make sure that, give them a progress report on that treatment. And it's pretty realistic that you could find 1 out of 3 every hour that didn't need that. It is possible to do that. The other thing to think about is maybe it's time to look at an associate dentist in your practice. If your schedule is that full with hygiene, it could be that you could support, an associate doc. And that could be a way to grow your practice, a way to reduce the hygiene exam burden in your practice, and really also a pathway to achieve an effective work-life balance. I'm not a big fan of a solo dentist practice model. Now, don't let me put a wet blanket on you if you do not want to have another doctor in your practice. I'm fine with that. But I don't meet a lot of solo dentists that honestly report that they have an effective work-life balance. Many times they say, no, it's way tilted in the form of work, not life. Although I will tell you, and I personally think the best way to get an effective work-life balance is to have a 3-day clinical week. 3-day clinical week. And I'm not talking about 3 12s. I'm talking about 3 normal days, because that's the quickest way to get an effective work-life balance. Now, Can that be done as a solo dentist? The answer is yes. I have clients, active clients that are just happy as can be. Solo dentists working 3 days a week. But it does present some challenges. The challenges are not being available enough for your patients. So let's say you work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If someone needed a Friday appointment, well, they're going to have to choose another office. The other thing I find is that it's hard to give your team members enough hours. A 3-day, assuming 8-hour clinical days, a 3-day work week is going to result in 26, 27, 28 hours a week for your team members. And that may not be enough. And you may lose good team members because they need more hours. But it can be done. But it's more easily done with 2 docs, whether it be an owner doc and associate or partners. It's more easily done with 2 docs. So there's some suggestions. Oh, one more real practical. Set it up in your practice, doctor, so that you can come in and do the hygiene exam at any time during the appointment, not just at the end. Because at the end, it's going to be rush hour at the end, having to do all the exams. So let your hygienist know that you may come in any time during the hour, depending on what's happening with your schedule. And the cue would be stand at the threshold. Your hygienist will see you there. She can look up, and your hygienist can say at that point, you know, Gary, we're at a good point for the doctor to come in and do the exam, and motion you into the room. And that way you're doing the exams at your convenience instead of them all backing up at the end of the appointment. Just a little practical tip there.
Thank you, Gary. Let me ask you question number 3. Do you recommend charging patients for hygiene cancellations or no-shows? That's a fair question.
Fair question. And this is a tricky one. So let me tell you what I teach our clients to do. I teach our clients to send out, first of all, everyone gets one get out of jail free card because stuff does happen. But the second time there is a no-show, we send a certified letter. Recommend our clients send a certified, and it says, we have a problem. We had you scheduled at 2:00 on Thursday, and for whatever reason, you weren't able to make that appointment. Our accountant has recommended that we charge a $150 broken appointment fee. Now, I made a silly number up, Naren, $150. Our accountant has recommended we charge $150 broken appointment fee. However, that doesn't feel right to us. So we're simply going to go by the honor system. We're going to ask you to either keep all future appointments or give us 48 hours notice if you need to change them. In the future, if you no-show for a hygiene appointment or do not give us 48 hours advance notice, you will need to be under the care of another dental office. We send that letter out. And we follow through with it, Darren. If they no-show at their next time, they're out. We send them out. We let them go haunt some other practice. Now, notice what we did. We threatened to charge them. We didn't charge them, and we give them one more chance. I think that's a better approach. I have no problem if you want to charge a patient. I have no problem. Many times they won't pay it, and they'll be upset about it. But I do think we need some consequence to it. Because, Darren, if there's no consequence to their behavior, why in the world should they ever change their behavior? Dr. Phil says, the TV psychologist personality.
Yeah.
He says, you train people how to treat you.
Yes.
I think he's right. If your patients can just blow you off, then they're just going to keep blowing you off because there's no consequence.
Right.
So I do think there should be a consequence. I like our approach better than just flat out charging them.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm not against having a charge because then there's a consequence to it. Yeah.
Thank you, Gary. As always, you always give a direct answer, so appreciate that. Let me ask the last question, 4th one. Like most parts of the country, we are seeing rapidly rising hygiene wages. I checked some PPO EOBs, explanation of benefits, and discovered that some plans are not even reimbursing me enough to cover hygiene wages, meaning
not even the hourly wage.
Hourly wage.
Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, this is becoming more and more prevalent, especially as the plans are lowering their PPO fees. You're going to find that in many cases, it's not even covering your hygienist hourly rate with the way hygiene wages are rising.
Right.
And that alone it's not enough just to cover your hygiene hourly rate because there's other expenses associated with the appointment. There's the room, there's the equipment, there's the materials, there's the admin cost to put a butt in the seat. And so really you've got to do more than just cover the hygiene wages. You have to cover those other expenses as well. Otherwise, it's a loss leader. And it doesn't make any sense for any aspect of your practice to be a loss leader. It does not make sense. Now, many dentists don't know this because they don't know what their adjustments are. They don't know. Right. And here's why. There's two accounting ways to enter your fees into your practice management software, Dentrix, EagleSoft, Open Dental, or any other practice management software. One way is to enter your usual customary and reasonable fees. When you enter your usual fees in, then when you get an EOB, an explanation of benefits from insurance company, you load that into the computer, and then your software does the math to tell you what your adjustment was. But only 10% of the dentists in the country enter their contracted fees. The other 90% do it the other way. They enter their contracted fees into your fee schedules in your computer. And by the way, all three major practice management software encourage that: Dentrix, EagleSoft, Open Dental. And they encourage that because it simply makes it easier to track collections. So if you produced $100,000 in contracted fees this month, then we want to collect $100,000 because that's what you're able to collect. So it makes it easier to track the collections. But the downside of that other method is you never know what you're writing off. And if you never know what you're writing off, it's quite literally you're driving around blind. You're driving an exotic sports car, high-performance sports car, with a set of blindfolds on. By the way, Naren, that just makes me break out. As a car guy, that makes
Not
me
only
break
that
out
you're going to
into a
get
cold
hurt, but you're
sweat.
going to destroy the car too, right?
Oh, that makes me break out into a cold sweat as a car guy about driving a high-performance car with blindfolds. No, don't do that. Don't do that. And so doctors are figuring out, and we can help you with that, by the way. Naren and I developed a custom Excel spreadsheet that with 3 simple pieces of information, we can run the numbers through the spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet is accurate to plus or minus 2%, where you'll know what you're writing off. Just to kind of punctuate that, Naren, recently a new client of ours in our coaching had, he entered his contracted fee, so he didn't know what he was writing off. So we used that Excel spreadsheet. We call it the insurance write-off calculator. And we did it for him. And this was a practice that in 2022 collected $1 million. Nice, solid solo dentist practice. When we ran the numbers, he had to produce $1,537,000 in order to collect $1 million. Now, if you're listening to this quickly, you might think, oh, that office has a collections problem. No, it doesn't have a collections problem. It has a write-off problem. He was writing off $537,000 a year. Naren, I like all of the dentists to think of their insurance adjustment as a marketing expense, because you're paying Delta to provide you patients. And in this case, $537,000 a year to collect $1 million. But where was his overhead based, Naren? Is the overhead based on the $1 million he collected or the $1,537,000 he had to generate?
It's based on the $1,537,000 he had to generate.
Correct, because you had to generate all that dentistry. So now you're getting hit from both ends. Your overhead's going up, but you got to generate a massive amount of dentistry. All your supplies, all your staffing, all your expenses are generated on $1,537,000. And then your revenue is going down because they're dropping fees. So rather than handing the insurance company all that $537,000 a year, I recommend that you replace the insurance company as your source of patients with Google as a source of new patients. And you do that through mastering organic search engine optimization. And the best way to do that, from my own experience, as well as the experience of our clients, is to have you, Aaron, Equa, the agency that you found, the digital marketing agency, help the practices master organic SEO. Aaron, can we put a link in the notes for a marketing strategy meeting? By the way, the URL, if you're listening and want to go there, is www.equa.com/MSM. Again, equa.com/MSM. And any of our listeners can schedule a free marketing strategy meeting, can learn how they could radically reduce their costs and spend a fraction of that amount of money, a small fraction of that amount of money, and get the added benefit of patients choosing you, not because you're on their insurance, but for other reasons. So that was a great question. And if you want to learn how to reduce your insurance dependence, let's put a link also in show notes of our episode we recorded earlier on Thriving Dentist Show, 6 steps to successfully resign from PPO plans. Another reason to visit the webpage. Aaron, as we come to the home stretch today, this has been a fun episode, kind of an episode where we get in the weeds a little bit and go through a lot of different details. proven tips to keep your hygiene schedule filled. I want to say thanks to you, Naren, for co-hosting this episode. I also want to thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. Also, I want to thank your wonderful team at Equa that not only provides new patients for Lifestyles, but for so many of my clients as well. Thanks for all the great work that you do. I also want to thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. If you haven't done so already, hit subscribe in whatever podcast directory you listen to your podcasts on. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, whatever those directories are, hit subscribe. It's free. It means every Wednesday when we upload a new episode, it will be automatically uploaded to your listening device for your convenience. On that note, let me thank you for the privilege of your time and tell you that Naren and I will look forward to connect with you on the next Thriving Dentist Show.